Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to our Insider Insight Show. I'm honored to have with me someone who is a legend in the freedom movement. Someone who has put his life on the line by empowering people by providing information that the bought-off lamestream fake media, big government, big tech, big industry do not want anyone to know about, let alone act upon. It's my honor to have with us Zach Vorhies. A little background on Zach. He was a senior software engineer at YouTube and Google for 8.5 years. Zach was involved in the following software products and platforms: Google Earth, YouTube for PS4, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch. While working at YouTube in his final years, Zach learned that Google was censoring what they called, quote, fake news, and investigated further into the company and what they were up to. Only what Zach found out was that indeed not only Google had defined, quote, fake news to mean actual events that had actually happened, but also had created an artificial intelligence system to classify all available data to Google search. The reason Google wanted to classify all the data was so that this could be used by the artificial intelligence system to re-rank the entire internet according to Google's corporate values and culture. In June of 2019, Zach Vorhies resigned from Google, which a number of people do. But then here's what makes Zach very unique. He had the courage, and he took with him 950 plus pages of Google internal documents and delivered them to the Department of Justice. And through Project Veritas, phenomenal site, phenomenal website, fantastic work, he informed the public about Google's extensive censorship system. Zach has since been fighting against censorship every day, every minute of every day, and will continue to do so through the election and for years to come after that. You can follow Zach at his website, Zach Vorhies, Vorhies, ZachVorhies.com. Zach, welcome to Operation Freedom and the Insider Insight Show.
Wow, Dave, thank you so much, and thank you for the glowing introduction. Looks like you did some research ahead of the show. It's weird hearing all those things about me because I was like a nobody 2 years ago, right? I was just like an engineer and just freaking out about Google taking over the internet, basically hijacking the election process. Because if you control the information, then you can control how people vote and how people think. Because a lot of our thoughts are a reflection of the container of allowed discourse, which is why that, ultimately these controllers that control society want to limit the types of ideas and the types of voices, such as yourself, that are able to get out there. And so, thank you.
Zach, while you were at YouTube and Google, when did your antenna go up saying, wait a minute, something's off here? There is something nefarious going on with what they're up to. What started to tip you off, and then what reinforced it?
Yeah, so there was a particular point when, I went, wow. And that particular point was when Donald Trump won the election and the reaction at Google 1 week later. And there's this very famous speech that
right.
They gave that was an hour, which was about their thoughts on the election. And Sergey Brin said some really inappropriate things about how he was personally offended at the election of Donald Trump. And that the blip of nationalism would pass and then things would go back to the way that they were. And I was thinking to myself, this is really, inappropriate for them to be making such comments because it's not Google's election. It's the election of the American people. And there's a process and they need to respect that. And they weren't. But one of the things that really got me was a question that was asked by one of these engineers, and he asked the CEO, Sundar Pichai, about what are some of the things that Google did really well during the election. And Sundar, the CEO, replied that they were successful in filtering fake news. And I thought to myself, I'm like, well, wait, we're classifying fake news and filtering it? And so, Google's a really open company because they're like, we're not doing anything wrong. So, you can just look and see what your neighbor's doing. And so I'm just going to go and, do a search for fake news and see what I can find. And that led me down a rabbit hole, because when I started looking at the examples of fake news, what I discovered was that they were classifying real events as fake news. And I looked at it, and one of the examples that they gave was the idea that Clinton was running weapons through Benghazi in order to arm ISIS. Mm-hmm. And this was in 2016. And so I went, well, I don't really know if this is true or not, but maybe it's time for me to become an expert. And so I started doing my research, and what I found out was, there's a lot of evidence that Hillary Clinton ran weapons through Benghazi in order to arm ISIS, in order to destabilize Syria. And I went, this may not be about censoring fake news. This may be about controlling political speech. Mm-hmm. And covering for Clinton. And Clinton, of all people, like one of the largest criminals of history. Why is Google covering for, this woman? So once I realized that there was a classification of what fake news was, I realized that there would be an executor that would do the implementation of filtering. And so I went to find out what that project was, and I found it.
And while you were going down this rabbit hole, Zach, did you speak to anyone else in your group or in your sphere at Google, YouTube about your concerns and that some of the data and information you had found in your rabbit hole, or did you confine it to yourself because of concern for what would happen if it got out what you were investigating?
I put out some feelers. Once I saw this information, I started probing my coworkers a little bit to see what they thought. Unfortunately, it became very obvious the scale of the programming, I guess, for lack of a better term, that these people were indoctrinated with. And they would give me these pre-canned answers. And I would even ask outrageous things, about all the anti-white racism. And they just totally accepted it as normal and something that was good because whites were these really evil people. So now the tables are being turned and it's just just desserts. And I'm just like, whoa. Right, it's just really? And so that kind of ended the probing. I did probe a little bit further on some of my coworkers. I was friends with this one guy on the bus that I would take every morning, and I was like, oh well, imagine, how bad it is if you're a conservative like me. And he just was just like, what? Right. You're a conservative? And then he started asking me all these questions, and then after that, he hated my guts.
There you go.
So that's Google's atmosphere. That's the environment that they're fostering.
And as I mentioned, Zach, you turned over after you were investigating and you were researching, got this information, smoking gun information about what they were up to. You got 950 pages plus of documents, and you brought them to the Justice Department. A couple things. The 950 pages. It's incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to summarize those 950 pages. But when you looked at those 950 pages and you brought this to the Justice Department, and if somebody in the Justice Department said, hey, Zach, give me the 3 most important things in these 950 pages, what would you have told them, or what did you tell them?
Well, what I told them was that, there's this YouTube controversial query blacklist, and literally half of it is trying to cover for the Las Vegas massacre. It's 40 pages, 20 pages of it is just this one event.
Wow.
And almost all the rest of it is done specifically to cover up what appears to be false flag attacks. So people searching for information about these terror events, and Google's trying to cover it up. So, for example, there was the Parkland shooting, and there was that, what's his name, Kyle Hogg or David Hogg?
David.
So there's this outtake that someone released on the internet of David Hogg forgetting his lines. And so people were searching for that on YouTube. YouTube didn't want that to be found, so they started blacklisting people trying to search for David Hogg forgets his lines. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Why does YouTube give a shit about this?
Right.
And they shouldn't. But they are. And the 95% of all the YouTube controversial, query blacklist is just about filtering false flag events. And there's other really outrageous things in there, like they were blacklisting cancer cures. Like literally, the literal phrase that they used was "cures cancer" and "cancer cures."
Mm-hmm.
They also blacklisted the term Eighth Amendment to the Constitution of Ireland. Well, what's that? Well, that's the right to life, or the banning of abortion in Ireland. Why did they ban it? Because Ireland was holding a referendum, and the pro-abortionists got in control. Then Google shut down all of the ads. Oh, we're not going to have ads on our network anymore. Just pulled out the rug from everyone when the pro-abortion side was ahead, and they meddled in that election. So that's the controversial query blacklist. The second thing is that their news algorithms were specifically tuned to the Comey-Trump thing that happened in, 2017? I think it was 2017.
17.
Yeah. They tuned their entire news algorithm on that news cycle to reflect the way that the mainstream media was reporting on things. And what they've done is that they've been able to come up with a way that if the media exploits the way that they use certain phrases and keywords, then the artificial intelligence will link two stories together and then create this super story that will span 8 days. Yeah. And so there's a new story, and they basically say, they add it to the tree of stories that are all interrelated. And because it adds to that tree, they say, well, this story is so important that the media's written 8 articles from the Washington Post, let's say. And so what that does is that ranks it all the way to the top.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they've done is that they've essentially created a mechanism by which the deep state is able to use certain key phrases and structure in their story to map to these algorithms.
Right, to feed into the artificial intelligence to boost it, to give it a rocket.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've been meeting a lot of SEO people, and they've been telling me that there's a balance to be played between writing a story or a website for the algorithms and for the humans.
Interesting.
And so, and you'll notice this, you look on a story and the keywords will be put in the H1 or the H2 header. So it'd be the really big bold text or the slightly less big bold text. They're keyword stuffing that because what they're trying to do is they're trying to attach on to the searches that you're doing and direct it to the mainstream media. So, if you're trying to look for Obama kids in cages, to verify what Trump said, well, the mainstream media in the 24-hour news cycle has made it, they've structured their news articles in such a way that they capture that traffic and they're redirecting it towards their narrative. And so even if you're searching for something that's, conservative, you're going to get funneled into this leftist, authoritarian, progressive media complex. And then the final thing that I said was, okay, they're doing this manipulation, but also it's very likely that Google's revenue stream is not what they say that it is. That there's a hidden shadow revenue stream that they're claiming is ad search. Okay, so there's a saying in Silicon Valley, and that saying is this: if the product is free, you are the product.
Right.
Well, Google's free, which means that you're the product. Well, what does that mean? Well, Google's selling your data.
Yeah.
And they're selling, your location data, your search habits, who you are as a person, your shadow profile that they're creating on you. And they're selling this to anyone who's going to buy it, intelligence agencies around the world. And so then the question is, well, how do they get this money in? And have you ever heard of a click farm?
Yeah.
Yeah. Asia's got all these click farms. And what I've been told is that those are money laundering operations.
Really?
That there's certain keywords that are being purchased. They're being purchased by a company, and then that same company clicks them, and that shows up on Google's budget sheet as as advertising revenue. But what it really is it's a payout from maybe say China. I'm speculating here, but I'm assuming that China's doing it this way as in North Korea. I can't say that it is because I've never actually been in these click farms, but it's known that that this is what's going on. And so I told the Justice Department, the DOJ, I was like, look, if you're going to be looking for these this keyword scam, eventually these people are going to get lazy. They're going to start typing in nonsense keywords, and these nonsense keywords are going to have like a load of clicks that don't make any sense. And so if they want to investigate Google, they should audit these keywords and find the ones that don't make any sense whatsoever and figure out who's been clicking them. And that's going to lead them onto the trail of where this shadow money system is coming from. So they actually were very, very receptive to that last part at the DOJ, and they took copious notes. And they eventually did meet with me, but it took about a month after the disclosure when I went back to Washington, D.C. for the second time. Then they escorted me in, and they did the whole, I don't know if you've ever been in one of those federal buildings. There is a lot of security that you have to go through. It's like going through the airport.
Yep.
So I was quite impressed by all that.
And that's what you're aware of, the security. There's another level of security you don't even know about, right?
Wait, do you know about it?
Well, I've been told about it. Yeah, we think we're going through a lot of security, but I've been told whatever security you think you're going through, add to it another 50%.
Okay, interesting.
So, Zach, you handed over these. You had this meeting. So you left Google YouTube in June of 2019.
Yes.
When did you first approach the Justice Department?
I approached them. It was going to be July.
Okay. So when you approach them and you hand them these 950 pages, how did they treat you? How did they look at you? Did they look at you like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Or did they welcome you with open arms?
Well, they welcomed me with open arms. I didn't. The way that I dropped it off at the DOJ was I mailed it to them. Oh. So I didn't actually see anyone, You
told them it was coming.
Yeah. I told them it was coming. And I didn't just print out 950 pages. I also sent them the laptop that I'd used to get all this information. So
they sourced it.
Yeah, so source. So it was the whole evidence chain. But then I was told because I didn't actually address it to anyone that it was going to take 6 weeks of processing.
Oh my goodness.
And it might even take a year.
So,
yeah, so I had to reprint them all and walk in with USB sticks. And that's why I went there the second time was to literally drop it off to a specific person so he could kick off the process. And that happened in, I would say, either the end of August or September.
Okay, so then you did that. This is the second, go around. Okay, and how you said they took copious notes? Is that when they took copious notes at that meeting?
Yeah, they were super happy to talk to me.
How many people were there? That was it one guy or a bunch?
It was three. It was one guy he actually left a year later. Huh. But he was,
where did he go? He didn't go to Google, did he?
I don't know where. I can't remember where he went, but he did take some private sector job.
Oh,
I hope it pays him a lot. Yeah. And somebody else had to take over the whole Google investigation. But he took copious notes, and he had 2 assistants that were also taking copious notes.
Okay, so you had this meeting, this second meeting. Did you see positive flow after that, or was it just kind of a death valley of silence?
Oh man, no! So much action happened. So 51 state attorney generals launched an antitrust investigation. Right, we've got 50 states and like 2 territories. So now it's all 52. California was the last holdout.
Oh, of course.
Now they're investigating too. And so 51 state attorney generals like launched an investigation like a month after I went to the DOJ, and also the city of New York, and also the federal government. So you've got 3 different administration levels of the U.S. government system that's now investigating Google, and they should have already come out with like some sort of tidbits of what they were going to do, but we're still waiting on that. Maybe it'll come this week. Who knows?
Now, do they stay in touch with you? Not only the feds, but any of these other states, or is it silence?
Surprisingly, they've been pretty silent. The only person that's reached out to me was the California FBI division, and they really wanted to talk to me. And they were actually willing to drive all the way up to LA to meet me in San Francisco and get my testimony on record. But then Sidney Powell, who I was in contact with, was like, yeah, that's a bad idea. You shouldn't do that.
Yes, so, always listen. Sidney's a friend of mine. Always listen to Sidney.
Yeah, so I did. So I canceled my interview with the FBI, and I said, hey, I will, whatever you want to ask me, feel free to type it out in an email message, and I'll assist you over email. And so I put the ball in their court, because if they're willing to drive up 6 hours each way.
Yeah, and they never got back in touch with you, did they?
No.
Oh, no. They nothing like Hey, it's all about perjury and entrapment. Just look at poor General Flynn.
Yeah.
Because if they don't get what they want, they just make it up, Zach.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't think that the California FBI is necessary. It could be corrupt. I don't know. I've never talked to them beyond that one phone call when they were.
Yeah, but you don't want to be the guy to find out.
Oh man.
No.
I can only imagine what my life would be.
Oh. Okay, so all these state attorney generals, the feds, the city of New York, they're all looking at this, but they're not buzzing your phone off the hook.
No, not at this point.
Do you find that odd?
I do find that odd. I do find that odd a lot. Yeah.
Do you think that your phone will remain silent till after November 3rd, and then all of a sudden you'll start? Yeah, I won't be able to talk to Zach over the phone because your phone's always busy.
Well, let's hope. I would love to get on the witness stand at some point and talk about my experience because right now we're all talk, right? But when you go into the courtroom, that's when it gets on record.
Right.
So I would love to give testimony on record. I've put all the documents on my website at zachvorhies.com so that when they're searching for it, they can just find it all and have all the analysis. So I don't necessarily think that them talking to me is perhaps critical, because all the critical stuff is out there. Mm-hmm.
And the Department of Justice never said to Zach when you were there that time or since, hey, Zach, we need you to come back. We need to put you under oath, and we need to depose you. We need to put you in a skiff to talk about something. They've never done that.
No, they've never done that.
And let's talk about the feedback, blowback you got after you stepped forward. You present this to the Department of Justice. You have the second meeting. You then go to the great Project Veritas. Boom, out it goes. But their platform, instant. Power move by Zach. So now let's talk about what, before you did Project Veritas, were you getting blowback because it was circulating that Zach Vorhies was on the warpath?
Well, it's interesting because when I first disclosed with Project Veritas in June, I did it anonymously. I did it behind a shadow.
Right.
and they changed my voice.
Right.
We only released 2 pages out of the 950. And the reason why I did this is because part of me wanted to release the whole thing, but I had to actually pray about it because I was like, am I doing this to live out some revenge fantasy?
Right. I get it. Yeah, right.
You know, so I really prayed about it, and the overwhelming feeling I got was that it was that my motivations may not be entirely clear, and that there was, I guess, best way to describe a little bit of sin in there sprinkled in. So it was like you need to walk away and go back to building software and stop trying to tear Google down, you know. And so I listened to that and I walked away.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened after that is that Google came after me. And first they came after me with a very expensive law firm. And as I started asking other lawyers about what I should do, they were kind of salivating, and, you know, because it turns out that they can make a lot of money fighting Google about those documents. And what they basically described is that I was about to have all my finances ruined, that Google was not doing this to necessarily win. They were doing this to just drain me of money, and that they were, just even if it was 10 to 1, they would spend it just to ruin my finances. And so I that had me concerned. And then an anonymous troll started trolling me on Twitter and dead naming me and calling me out by my real name, and also declaring that I was the leaker. So I said, okay, well, this is getting really bad.
Do you have an idea who that was in retrospect?
Yeah, we figured it out. So we did this trick where, you know, we're computer guys, so we host content on our servers, and we created a link to our server. And the thing is that when a computer accesses a link, grabs an image or whatever, what happens is that we capture all of that connector's information, their IP address, where they're connecting from. And so while debating with this person, we dropped in a link. They clicked it.
Ooh.
They didn't have a VPN. And so when we captured their IP address, we geolocated it and found that it was coming from Google, Indiana. It was literally a Google employee doing this from inside of Google.
Well, not very slick.
Not very slick. So we found that out and realized that, okay, well, now Google's doing PsyOps as well as legal warfare.
Right.
So I decided that, okay, well, they want their laptop. You know, they want to search through my personal laptop, all my backups, inspect my home office. This was communicated to me through a letter. They're doing these PsyOps. I need to do something, and I need to like hit back. And so like I prayed about it again, and I got this overwhelming feeling like hit them with everything that you got. Just don't have any more restraint. Just go at them. And so I went, okay, so I took the laptop and I was like, well, they really want the laptop, and I can't just like leave it in the park and claim that it got stolen, because that's a lie.
Right.
So what can I do with it? Well, it's evidence, and the reason why they want it is because they want to do a cover-up of their criminal activity. So really, the laptop only belongs in the hands of law enforcement.
That's why the Department of Justice. Yeah.
So I took the laptop, I put it in the box with 950 pages, sealed it all up, and just sent it to Washington, D.C., the DOJ, Department of Antitrust, and I wrote them back a letter to Google, and I was like, yeah, I had your laptop, but it had criminal evidence of sedition and conspiracy, so I sent it to law enforcement, and you can get it back from them. And then I sent the letter to the wrong department because they wanted me to send it to the law department. Instead, I sent it to the shipping and receiving, because what I wanted to do is I wanted to start disrupting their company, because like there's no restraint, like the brakes are off. It's time to do warfare. All warfare is based on deception. So first off, I sent this to the wrong department so it would get lost, explaining what was happening. The laptop went to the DOJ, and then what I did is to send out a warning to them to YouTube and Google, who were watching me online, is I put out this cryptic tweet, which was a dead man switch. And what I did was I contacted James O'Keefe and I said, "Hey James, in the event of my untimely death, all documents will become public." And so I repeated that on Twitter with a tweet that said, "In the event of my untimely death, all documents become disclosed," and had a picture of a dragon like ensnaring this guy in its tail, and then as like the last move, the guy like stabbed the dragon in the heart. And so that was my message to Google. Back off. Well, they didn't back off. They sent a wellness check after me. Now, I got a heads up about this wellness check because I had given Google the wrong address purposely. And so they sent police to my friend's house, not my house. And so I got a heads up that there was some police and they were really trying to get their hands on me. And so 30 minutes later, boom, like loud knocks on my door. And it's really weird for someone to knock on my door because there's a gate in front of it and it's metal and there's a lock from the inside. You got to, do it. So the police had been able to get into the gate and they were banging on my door, and I was trying to pretend that I wasn't home, so I didn't answer it, hoping that they would go away.
They did.
But they didn't go away. They called in a bomb threat, and they escalated.
No,
they called in a bomb threat.
Hey, Zach, when the cops showed up at your friend's house, did your friend go, "What are you doing here? There isn't any Zach Vorhies." Is that what your friend did?
Yeah.
And what did the cops say? We want to make sure Zach is okay. Is that what they were there for? What did they tell him?
I don't remember. I don't recall if they said that they wanted to check whether I was okay or what their stated purpose was. I do know that they were repeating that they need to contact me and they need to ask me a bunch of questions.
Okay, and then they repeated that when they came to your place after they called in the bomb threat, whatever.
Well, I wasn't answering the doorbell or their knocks or their. Yeah, I was not answering them. It wasn't until about an hour later where they finally got a hold of me because they were blowing me up on my phone that I finally was like, "What do you guys want?" And they're like, "We just want to ask you a wellness check, 6 questions." And I said, "Okay, well, let's just go to the gate and you can talk to me through the bars." And I came down there and that's when I saw the bomb robots.
Oh.
And I was like, "Oh, I can't meet you down here. There's like 2 really expensive looking bomb robots. One was big, had this arm. It was like coming through the doorway to grab. They were grabbing denatured alcohol, which was used by my roommate because she's a fire dancer. And so that's what they called in was the bomb threat, was that thing. So they had this robot arm like coming to like pick it out. And then there was like this tiny robot behind it that had like, it was like fast. It had these eyes that were like this camera that was like going back and forth.
Oh, that's creepy.
It was really cool. I've got a video of it.
It's kind of creepy.
Yeah, it's kind of creepy. So I was like telling the police officer, "Hey, I can't meet you because there's these bomb robots in the way."
Right.
It's like, well,
hard to talk to a robot. Yeah.
Yeah. So I could have actually talked to the robot, actually. Right?
Well, that would have been actually probably more fulfilling for you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they could have asked me the questions and I could have responded, but they were like, "No, well, we actually have to have you come out to the street." And I was like, no, that breaks the agreement. We had an understanding that we were going to meet in the middle, and you were going to ask me these questions because you couldn't ask me over the phone because you need to see my face. Well, obviously you can see my face, but now, once again, they're moving the goalposts.
Right.
Now I've got to come out. So I said, "No, I'm not going to come out." And they started texting me saying, well, they're going to, be there for as long as it takes. And they're willing to stay there for like up to 3 days.
Okay.
And I'm like,
have fun.
So I'm like, well, there's police outside. They've shut down the street from 20th to 22nd. Maybe they're going to invent some exigent circumstances and break in to my house and arrest me, or maybe shoot me, or maybe their camera malfunctions and then the media comes up with some story.
Right.
Well, that's an easy cover-up.
Right.
So what I decided to do is like, well, I might as well just come outside so that if they try any funny business, there's like 20 people recording with their cameras And so I did that. They asked me all the questions.
What were the questions?
Like, do I want to harm myself or anyone else?
Oh, for God's sake.
And, do I need to be on any medications? Have I skipped any medications? And then finally, the police were like, well, why would Google call in this wellness check? And I went, aha! I knew it was Google. But when he confirmed that Google had called in the wellness check, then I was like, yeah, I know why they called in this wellness check. It was because I sent all their documents to the DOJ. And they're like, do you have any proof of that? And I had actually taken a picture of the letter that I had sent the DOJ. So I was just like, yeah, here's the phone, pretending this is my phone. Yeah. And he looked at that, and then that's when it became real that, I was a whistleblower. They were there to intimidate me. And then everyone really got really friendly. They de-escalated.
Really?
Yeah.
They became your buddies. Even the robot.
Became my buddies.
Even the robot.
Joking around. FBI, San Francisco Police Department. I believe it was the SWAT team and the bomb squad and some other agencies were also there. So this was like 4 or 5 different agencies I counted that were there at my house. We all started joking around, and then I had this really burning question that I've always wanted to ask these cops, which was, what's the most realistic television show about cops? Is it CSI? And they said, no, there's only one accurate show. All the rest are garbage. The only one that's accurate is Reno 911.
There you go.
And I went, what? And he's like, yep. And all the other agencies all agreed, in unison that, yeah, Reno 911 is the only accurate cop show on television these days.
There you go, making lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah.
So then they go, they take their robot.
Yeah.
They leave Zach alone. Then, did you have lawyers at this point? I mean, because they had the high-priced lawyers you talked about. Did you have any kind of legal representation, or was this just Zach being his own lawyer?
Well, I don't have any representation. I still don't have any representation. The reason why I don't have any representation is because I've researched the way that the law is structured and the Bar Association. And as far as I'm concerned, you wouldn't have a criminal cartel operating the United States if it weren't for the compliance of the Bar Association that has made it so that is possible. And as far as I'm concerned, if I had a lawyer, here's what's going to happen. They're going to ask for a very large retainer.
Yes.
I'm going to give them thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars. At that point, they are controlled by the bar. They are scared to death about getting disbarred and losing their ability to practice law. So they're not going to do what's in your interest. They're going to do what's in their interest. And if I do anything that they think can get them disbarred, they're going to refuse to go along with it. And if I go along with it anyways, they're going to cancel being my lawyer, but they're going to take my retainer. So at that point, I've got a money chain on me, and my option tree becomes much more restricted, and the restriction comes on the parts that are the most juicy and the ones that I want to take advantage of. So as far as I'm concerned, I didn't want to voluntarily enter into the legal realm. If I'm going to be brought into the legal realm, it's going to be by involuntary means. And if I were to go into the court system, I wouldn't necessarily be there to win it, because at that point I know I'm going to lose. My only goal at that point, if I enter into the legal system, is to expose the legal system to the normies that believe it's a well-functioning system, and it's there to martyr myself and show that the legal system is there to destroy the individual and to show how unjust it is.
Well, and this is exactly what's happening with General Flynn.
Yeah.
He, his family, and Sidney Powell. I think there are a couple exceptions on the legal side that are willing to do what's right for the client, and that one of those people is Sidney Powell.
Yeah.
So, just a little advice. If Zach ever needs an attorney, you already made a call to her once about the FBI thing. I think that should be your call.
Will you help me do my GoFundMe to help?
Sure.
Give a partial retainer?
Absolutely.
All right,
Absolutely, Zach. But you're right. You got to have the right person that's going to potentially defend you. So where do we stand today? They sent the wellness check. That backfired. All the cops, FBI, ATF, FBI, they all became the robots. They all became Zach's friend, as opposed to the guys who were going to bust him. So what happened then? I mean, where do we stand now with where's Google? It's Google decided, hey, you know what? This guy means business. He fights back. Maybe it's best for us just to shut the hell up? Is that where they are right now?
Yeah, they shut up. They stopped chasing me. The attorneys. So after that, I went to New York and sat in the chair of Project Veritas and disclosed the whole thing. And somehow Google got wind of this, and so their lawyers were now blowing me up off the hook, trying to talk to me, and I refused to talk to them.
Yeah.
Because their only goal is to stop the disclosure, and as long as the disclosure isn't disclosed, my life is in danger because now they got a target,
right?
And they're going to try to shut me up. So I ignored them and I unleashed everything, dropped into the public domain, and then after that, the legal firm sent me one more letter, and in the letter they were like, "Can we please get access to your computer so that we can find any missing documents that you may have had?" And I said, "Look,
out of my hands.
I'm totally happy to do that, but I have to tell you, because this is a criminal matter and there's an ongoing investigation, I want to inform you that if I find any documents that I have not disclosed to the public, I feel obligated to release those to the DOJ and to the public. Let me know how you want to proceed." And they never got back to me. So that was the last time I ever heard of that law firm.
So
I feel...
Zach, do you believe they're concerned that Zach Vorhies has multiple, let's just call them dead man switches, and that Zach still has some other shoes to drop, and this is why maybe they've decided to become silent? Because they're concerned that if they keep pushing the envelope, that all of a sudden there'll be more disclosure.
Maybe they think that I've stated so many times that I disclosed everything that I think that they probably feel that that's true. At this point, the deep state's trying to ignore me. Wikipedia won't allow an article on me.
Mm-hmm.
All the negative stories get pushed to the front.
Mm-hmm.
And as I started seeing the hit pieces come in, I realized that, well, I'm just going to do the same thing that Google does and redirect all their traffic. So if they start talking about Zach Vorhies and someone searches for Zach Vorhies, then let's have them reach zachvorhies.com, which has all of Google's disclosures on it. And so it just punches right back against the deep state. And that's where you're always wanting to be. You always want to be attacking. And so I put up zachvorhies.com, and now whenever someone writes a negative hit piece about me, I can see all the traffic go in on my analytics. Like, oh, I got a surge of people, and now they all got red pilled. And so at this point, the media wants to pretty much leave me alone, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done a few operations since then because I'm a medical freedom fighter. What Google was doing on the vaccine injured kids and the moms being silenced is just horrendous.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, I still get a few attack pieces every now and then. But it just gets redirected. It just ends up funneling people to my website. So that's where we're at today with that.
Zach, as a IT expert extraordinaire, I want to run something by you.
Okay.
On this platform, with the support, Admiral Ace Lyons, General Tom McInerney came on our platform on March 19, 2017, and spoke about an illegal surveillance system, a parallel platform outside of the NSA abuse, and it's well documented for 20-some years through Bill Binney and Kirk Wiebe about the NSA abuse. of the NSA abusing Americans' Fourth Amendment rights and searching their phone calls, emails, internet activities, financial transactions. But they came on the platform and said, listen, outside of the NSA system, there are agencies, including the CIA, FBI, that have developed these parallel platforms where there's no internal reporting system that have been illegally surveilling political opposition, if you will. And in particular, General McInerney and Admiral Lyons presented information through investigative journalists Mary Fanning and Alan Jones that they also uncovered, and through some military intelligence analysts, that this operation was being run through the Obama administration with Brennan and Clapper and Comey and Mueller, and that this was ongoing. And one of these platforms was called the Hammer. Bill Benny and Kirk Wiebe then stepped forward and said, listen, there are people saying that these parallel platforms outside of the NSA system don't exist. Bill Benny and Kirk Wiebe, as you're well know, two of the foremost experts in the world on surveillance platforms, said, listen, they not only exist, but we actually worked on them as well. Okay, and it then came out that several individuals chastised, I'm sanitizing that term, really defamed, slandered, and libeled Admiral Lyons, General McInerney, Bill Benny, Kirk Wiebe, the investigative journalist Mary Fanning, Alan Jones, myself, for bringing this information forward, that these platforms do not exist, that all the illegal activity was done on the NSA platforms, of which Bill Benny and Kirk Wiebe helped develop, and that none of these parallel platforms exist. Now, Zach, you're an insider. You know IT inside and out. The IT experts that I brought it to at the time said, yeah, they exist, and this is legit. My question to you, Zach, is what's your feeling on this?
Data wants to be free, and it's readily available, and all these sensors are multiplying exponentially. We're now going to have, essentially microphones in our light bulbs on the streets. That's the future. You can't, at this point, it's a force of nature, and it's going forward. And people ask me, like, well, what's your, OPSEC? And my OPSEC is, I assume that I'm being watched at all times by multiple intelligence agencies. And the harder I go to make something secure, well, then they're going to see a change in my data signature, and they're going to be like, oh, Zach's encrypting a lot of stuff now, and then they're going to focus that. And the problem with encryption is that our encryption algorithms have been chosen to be quantum weak. So the RSA algorithm, which uses large prime numbers in order to create an encryption scheme. Mm-hmm. That was possibly chosen because one day the encryption would be worthless, because you can just have a quantum computer traverse through the search space and factor numbers almost instantaneously. And what I've heard is that, and then I've also heard that the encryption algorithms themselves, which have been posted by the intelligence services, I think it might even be the NSA, post cryptology algorithms, I think those are actually broken by design, and they're able to reduce the effective encryption bits. So if you think that you've got 256 encryption, maybe it's actually only 92, and then that makes it like way easier to crack. And so at this point what we have is we've got a form of digital archaeology. So all this data comes through, it gets copied by default, stored into a vault, and then whenever they want to target an individual, they just use their supermassive computers in order to crack through the RSA encryption and grab the data that's inside and then surveil on anyone. And so at this point, if you're relying on trying to encrypt anything and using these digital networks, like, forget about it. They just look at it, and that's the way that it's going forward. They're going to watch us. Maybe you get to choose which intelligence agency gets to look at your private communications. That's about the extent of that you're going to have. And what's happening is that, first it was like the CIA and the NSA that had all this public intelligence, and then private companies started doing it. I mean, when I first worked at Google, almost at the same time, I interviewed for a company called Palantir, which is, and what they were creating, what they wanted me to work on was a shadow profile system, and this was back in 2008. So it was a shadow profile system that takes all these signals that they were getting from data sources, and it was figuring out like who you called and who your close networks are and clusters of people that were in these networks. That was like, since that's like over a decade ago that happened, I can only imagine the amount of data collection systems has increased to an unfathomable level. So this is a really big problem because we're generating data constantly, and it's all being captured by these smart systems. And even the most private, like the house I stayed at last night, it was a mansion in Beverly Hills, by this really woke person that hates the deep state, and she's remodeling her house. I counted 6 Google Nests, these hardware platforms that monitor every single thing in her house. Your voice, the temperature, what you're doing when you come in, everything. And this is a woke person. But it seems that convenience is so important to her that she's going to invite the enemy into her house so that it can spy on her 24/7.
Yeah, it's probably best we did do our interview yesterday then.
Right? So, these people that are like, oh, I want to go off the grid. I'm sorry. I worked for Google Earth for 5.5 years. I know what those satellites are capable of. Like, they've got 1 centimeter per pixel. Those military satellites are in the millimeters, right? I mean, unless you're underground, your data that you're giving off is going to be captured by something.
Right.
So, data security, this is a critical question because China takes it seriously. They do not sell U.S. firms the intelligence on their own citizens. They do not let our stuff get in there. They don't let our ISPs, our phone companies. So this is going to be one of the critical questions going forward. And it's not just an individual level. It's a national issue of what do we allow other people to capture of our citizens when they're not doing this, when they're not giving that data to us.
So these people that say, oh, it's only NSA and that push that mantra, to me, Zach, and you tell me if I'm wrong, that's just cover for all these other agencies, including the CIA, the FBI, all these other agencies that are in there digging deep on these parallel platforms to get information. That to say that it's all NSA is cover for all those other organizations. Am I wrong?
You're 100% right. It's more people are going to get more intelligence as time goes on. That's the way. It's a one-way graph, and it's going up as time increases.
So, Zach, we spoke about the negative blowback you got when you brought this information forward. I want to talk right now about some of the positive attaboy feedback you got. Educate our listeners, because many people believe, I got some info, I can't come forward with it because I'm all going to get negative. There's not going to be any positive. You've had some very positive feedback, and educate our listeners, if you don't mind, on that text message you got pretty early in this process.
Oh yeah, that text message. So I just disclosed through Project Veritas that morning, and about 3:15 p.m. I got this really weird text. That's Eastern time. I got this really weird text that said the following. Do not be afraid. There are angels watching over you. -Q. And so I looked at that and I went, what?
Right.
You got to be kidding me. And so I contacted my mentor immediately and I went, hey, Patrick, look at this message. What should I do? And he immediately got back. He's like, do not answer that message because they could be catfishing you.
Good point.
So we looked at the number, and the number seemed to be some like attached to burner phones because it was being like cycled through.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't actually know who's on the other end of the line. But what's notable is that the other Project Veritas whistleblowers, Ryan Hartwig and Zach McElroy, they also got messages from Q on the same day that they disclosed. And so
Similar messages
that they're going to be protected, that don't worry about what's happening. Because it's anxiety. Like, hey, what if they kill me? Like, I've seen people get killed.
Right.
Well, I haven't seen them, but I mean, I've
Oh, no, Michael
read about it.
Hastings, right? Michael Hastings, car into the tree all of a sudden. Boom, right? Boom.
Yeah, and there's also this girl named Katie Stein or something. She got killed by this like illegal immigrant that was like,
Kate Steinle.
yeah. And I'd start digging into her, and it turns out that she was like an assistant to like a pharmaceutical executive or something. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, she's tied in with Big Pharma? That they never even talked about that.
Uh-huh.
And so
it got suppressed in the search. That's the AI at work, buddy.
Yeah, it got suppressed.
Yeah.
And then some other insiders were telling me that looked like a hit job, and that the person that killed her was an assassin. That's usually why he had the gun from the Bureau of Land Management. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, oh, okay, well, those are assassinations. So I don't want to get, it's a concern. You don't want to get assassinated.
No,
so
right.
The fact that I got that message was anxiety reducing. And then a month later, a couple months later, I was in the AmpFest conference.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked to some military intelligence that were there. And what they said is, hey, look, we're watching you. Don't be afraid to do exactly what you're doing. We don't care what you have to say. We've already vetted you. Like, just keep on doing exactly what you're doing. Don't change anything. Just know that we are watching all signals to make sure that no one's going to do any harm to you. So, yay.
Interesting.
It's good to have patriots watching out for you. It's good to have those angels on your side.
Well, and you know what, Zach? I have gotten similar feedback about angels on our side that they're watching to protect and just to keep doing what we do. It's interesting, Zach, when I look back at my radio show, I've been doing it for 10 years, since October 2010. And there have been two instances in my live radio show that I've had very strange things happen after the broadcast. The first was back in about 2016 when I had a parent of one of the members of SEAL Team 6 that all were assassinated after they reportedly were involved in the killing of bin Laden. And that parent came forward to speak about the conversations he had with his son between when that mission reportedly occurred. I believe it was in May of 2012.
Are they all assassinated? They're all dead now? Everyone that killed Osama bin Laden?
Supposedly the guy who shot him is still alive, but everybody else, the entire SEAL team, got killed in August of 2012. They were all in a helicopter, all at the same time, which when you know how the SEALs work, 30 SEALs in one helicopter at the same time is, no one that's ever been a SEAL that I've spoken to, and there are many, have ever said that they've ever heard of an operation like that. But they were all in a helicopter and they all perished. It was shot down in the Tangine Valley. And I had Michael Stranges, who was a member of SEAL Team 6, who had died, and his father on, and he was speaking about it. And right after that interview, Zach, it was in the last segment of my show from 4:30 to 5 Eastern. I go into the next studio to send out some emails. And my computer would not allow me to send emails. It just kept freezing up. It kept, I was getting flashing lights and all this kind of stuff. Rebooted it, same thing.
Wow.
Never happened. Second time, same thing happened. Last segment of the show I mentioned with General Tom McInerney with the Sport of Admiral Ace Lines on March 19th, 2017, speaking about the Hammer, this illegal surveillance platform. I get done with that. I go into the next studio, go to send emails, flashing lights, blocked from sending any kind of emails. Computer kept freezing, rebooting. The phone lines were getting jammed at the station. Signal issues at the station. So my question, Zach, is while you were at YouTube and Google, did you ever have any experience with any of my work, or did you ever have potentially any indication that my work was being watched or reviewed? Because I can tell you, on the March 19th, 2017 interview, what ended up coming out is when the Department of Justice Inspector General released Strzok and Page's texts. On that night, several hours after that interview, they were texting about what General McInerney said on my radio show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I know that everyone's watched, and it's watched by an AI system that transcribes in real time what you're saying. Actually, it's beyond real time. As soon as you upload your video,
boom,
the AI transcribes the whole thing. Hours of content within seconds. So where exactly all those transcripts go, I know that, as an employee, I could see that those transcripts are being data mined to classify your video as right-wing news, obscene, uses foul language. There's all these classifiers that run, and then they give like the results, and I could look at the results of whether you were like part of that thing or not. So if you were right-wing news talk, and I'm not entirely sure what the classification was on how they did that, because it's machine learning intelligence that basically figures that out. Mm-hmm. But it would pop up on your video, and I could look at the matrix of all the classifiers. And what's interesting is that some of the classifiers were able to run, it seemed like really quickly, like instantaneous. And then there would be like some trickier classifiers that were running that would take a few days. And I noticed a lot of people, they're like, well, I upload the video, but then it turns out that it demonetized after the first 10 minutes, and then 12 hours later, it got remonetized. And part of that looked nefarious, but I could also see that part of the reason is that the less CPU intensive classifiers were running, and then they would make a decision and it would be wrong. Mm-hmm. And then there would be a more thorough AI that would come later and view it and then maybe reverse the decision. Also, I wouldn't put it past of Google doing their tricks, because they're just basically doing anything that they can to suppress people, at the beginning, and to mess around with people without explicitly banning the video.
Got it.
And so, as far as they were looking at you specifically, or things that I ran into, no, I didn't do those searches, and I don't know if they were concerned about that.
So, Zach, let's end the interview with this. If we looked at the 2016 election, if you had to estimate, based on what Google did with their searches and the like, how many votes do you believe they handed to Hillary Clinton, and how many votes do you believe that they pushed away from Donald Trump?
10 million.
10 million.
And 10 million. And that comes from Dr. Robert Epstein, who was the chief editor of Psychology Today. He's the expert in this. He's running simulations where they create their own search engine, and then people are typing in that are undecided about particular issues. Mm-hmm. They type in a search, and then by controlling the information that gets revealed to people, they measure that influence. And from that, from a lot of experiments, they came up with a model that predicted that 10 million votes were switched from Donald Trump to Clinton. They're definitely that's the reason why that they're meddling in these search terms, is because they're trying to control the output of an election. And there's really two ways that they do it. One is by hiding information.
Right.
And then the two is by, and this is actually more insidious, which is the auto suggestion feature when you go and type in Google.
Got it.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
You say like men can, and then auto completes. It's like men can have babies, men can have periods, men can get pregnant.
Right.
And what that is supposed to be is it's supposed to be a representation of the trends that people search for. So you're like, oh, well, this is being recommended because everyone else is searching for the same thing, and that's what they selected. But that's actually not the case. Google is actually putting these search terms in order to autocorrect not your spelling, but your thinking. And so, you try to type in Clinton body count, and then that doesn't autocomplete, and you're like, oh, well, it's just a conspiracy theory. But if you type in Clinton, and then it autocompletes to Clinton body count, then you're like, oh, wow, there's a lot of other people that also think that this might be true.
Right.
And then it's like the safety, because we're herd animals. So
That's
it's
right.
like, oh, this is safe. This is a path that many people are going down, so I can intellectually venture here. That's the systematic danger that Google represents. Is at least on YouTube, you're like, well, I'm being influenced by an individual, and you can sort of play around with that. But when you don't have those cognitive defenses up,
right,
and you're just searching for something, that's when you're at the most suggestible point.
And Zach, do you believe there have been any safeguards put in place between 2016 and this election coming up in November?
Yes, I do. I
believe
believe that the military is gotten in to Google and YouTube. I think they're thoroughly in control of that operation at this point. I mean, not in control of everything. I mean,
say negated.
They can negate it, and I believe that they've got something over a lot of these people because.
Yeah, I think they do too.
Yeah,
it's all leverage. It's all
leverage at this point. And what I've heard from the inside is that I don't know if you know this, but they got the Clinton emails, the whole Benghazi thing. Oh, we got to get their emails. Well, it turns out that Google had it the whole time. And what I've been told is that they used my leaks as leverage to get that information about Clinton. So I threw a little party by myself when I got told that. So
yeah, you should have. You should have thrown a big party. Invite the robot. Right? Invite the robot. Your best buddy, the
robots. Yeah. So there's something going on behind the scenes, and it's kind of obvious because like people are going to watch your video, and then the up next algorithm is probably going to recommend Tucker Carlson.
Yeah. Right.
So, if the Patriots weren't in control, then it would go to MSNBC, which is what it used to do.
Right. Absolutely. Right.
And now it seems that like the deep state on the right and the deep state are on the left, or like Trump's kind of he's got some deep state elements that are in there. He plays around with them a little bit. He has to interact with them.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
So it looks like they're funneling to Fox News a lot now. If you're on the right, I would like it to funnel to people like you, independent journalists that go out there and expose the truth, that aren't beholden to big pharma and these other conglomerates.
Yeah, Jimmy O'Keefe, yourself. I mean, this is where it should go.
Yeah, and the up next algorithm seems to be trying to peel off people from you guys to Fox News,
right? And
that's unfortunate. It's way better than trying what they were doing.
Absolutely.
And it seems that, like, despite all this, hey, you should go check out Fox, people are not buying it.
Right.
All the channels are now growing again. Like, when I left, the channels were all tanking, and this was happening, I guess, April of 2019, May 2019.
Yep.
And then I came out with the disclosure, and then if you just look at everyone's graph, like, it recovers, and then everyone starts growing again. So that's great. Like that's awesome. And who knows how big you guys are all going to grow. It's definitely the revolution. And now everyone that I know is at least getting some of their information from Twitter and from independent people, and not just being spoon-fed by the mainstream media. And now that their propaganda is sort of like wearing off, it's almost kind of like a diabetic that's not responding to the insulin. You got to like pump them full of insulin to keep their blood sugar low. And the same things with propaganda. Now they're like laying it on, like quadrupling and doubling down and quadrupling down, and really trying to push it into us because we're just not responding to it anymore because of people like you. And that's really the reason why I disclosed, is because I was like, there's this beautiful thing. It's the evolution of talk radio, and it's going to upend the centralized media system with a decentralized media system. And it's going to transform the society in the same way that the Gutenberg printing press did.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to lose privacy as individuals. Maybe we'll get it back. But so are the elites.
That's right.
And the elites used occulted hidden knowledge as a weapon.
Yes.
In order to take down governments.
That's right.
And if they can't hide in those shadows anymore, then it's essentially a whole different type of society.
It is.
And who knows all the things that will come out of knowing everything. Like, I was like, oh my God, we've got cancer cures. And then I found out that Google was was suppressing free energy sites that were cold fusion. They were like really suppressing that heavily. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, they wouldn't suppress it if it was bunk.
Right,
they would only suppress it if it was a systemic threat to their stockholders. So, good times are coming ahead of us. I think the fossil fuel age is finally going to be put to death. We don't need gasoline. We could have actually used nuclear like back in the 60s and just kept on going and gotten off all the coal and all the it's not necessary. And so, it's only being used because it's literally our money, like the petrodollar system. So we've got a really bright future ahead of us, and I'm really excited. We're going to have to go through some dark times. These next 7 weeks are going to be kind of crazy, according to the Flynn family. But once all is said and done, if we make it through, we're going to experience a renaissance 2.0.
Zach, folks need to follow you on a daily basis. What's the best way they can do that? They can, go to Zach Vorhies, VORHIES.com. How else can they follow you?
You can go to twitter.com/perpetualmaniac or search for Zach Vorhies up there. And if you want to fight back against the censorship, I am organizing a class action lawsuit against Google. It's called Stop Bit Burning, because the fascists of 100 years ago were burning bits, and the fascists today are still around, but they're not burning books, they're burning bits. Every time a video gets demonetized, removed, that's an act of bit burning. So we're going to stop the bit burning at stopbitburning.com. And so join our email list there. We're going to let you know what's happening. We've got a huge number of people that support us, some of the top health freedom fighters that you know of. Dave Jenda, if you've ever had a video demonetized or removed,
yes.
I invite you to get your experience with censorship on the record with us at stopbitburning.com.
Zach, I'd like to thank you for everything you have done, are doing, and will do. You have made an enormous positive difference for every person in our country and the world by having the courage to step forward, not just on one day, but every day and every minute of every day. And you educate and empower people with information that the bought-off, lamestream, fake media, and the deep state do not want people to know about. And in so doing, you empower every person of the world, and I thank you for that, Zach.
Well, thank you very much, Dave. And keep doing what you're doing. You've been a guiding light and an inspiration to myself, sitting there going, well, if Dave's not worrying about the repercussions of what he's saying, then maybe, I shouldn't either. So I really thank you for everything that you're doing, and I hope that you keep doing it.
It's very kind. It's much easier when you're an old man like me as opposed to a young, active guy like you. But I thank you, Zach, for those kind words. And I thank you, folks, for joining us today. Until next time, Dave Janda signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you.